Welcome patrons. It's been a long time coming, and Jesus Christ, have I had more impatient comments about getting to talk about Orlais than anything else. But finally, here we are, talking about Thedas' most powerful nation, the home of the Chantry, proper manners, and the game. Let's talk about Orlais. History. Until we get to Deventer, Orlais is going to be the nation with the most history, so buckle up kids, this is going to be a long one. I've talked previously that, at least in the history that we know, humans are not native to Thedas. In fact, we aren't really sure where they come from, to be honest. All humans came from one tribe that stumbled into Thedas somehow, called the Neromedians. Some shit happened and they eventually splintered into different tribes that spread across Thedas. Two tribes, the English and the Syrian, settled into what would now be Orlais, and the people of these two cultures would be largely responsible for the Orlais we know today. Over time, the English, who were in northern Orlais, got fucked up by the remaining Neromedians, while Syrian, in central Orlais, stayed safe and prospered. So the first blight comes and goes, Andraste frees much of soon-to-be Orlais from Deventer rule, Andraste is betrayed and dies, and parts of Thedas is given to Mafarath's sons. Today, we want to focus on Isarath, the man who gave Orlais its name and its first ruler. In negative 155 Ancient, Isarath forced the different Carian tribes to unite in an event that's called the Grand Unification. About 20 years later, it's found out that Mafarath betrayed Andraste, and people take their anger out on his sons. The son who ruled Navarra is eventually kicked out. His name, Verald. Isarath takes him in, although his brother begins to plot to take Orlais as his own. Now, history doesn't remember much of Isarath or Verald because they aren't the stars of today's show. They remember Isarath's wife, Jeshivas. Before her marriage, she was the first female chieftain of the Syrian tribe, and the Syrians were not too fond of the Elamari, the tribe where Isarath was from. So when Isarath asked for her hand, she accepted, and waited, and plotted and waited again to free her people from Elamari rule. So let's jump back to the brotherly feud over Orlais, and I'll let World of Thedas Volume 1 finish the tale. Jeshivas plied brother against brother in turn, then named both as partners in crime against faith. With artful turns, she invited invasion, then crafted rebellion against the court she inspired. Brother would kill brother and be killed in turn, two liberations she would then own. 8 generations before the Empire, before Draken, here were the seeds of elegance to come. Jeshivas twice married the sons of betrayal, twice widowed, our first chieftain born from us, of what would become true Orlais, where we venerate faith and the beauty of sacrifice, with daggers well hidden but well within reach. It is true we owe much to the sons of betrayal, for they were the tools that a master cast down. Let other claim credit for birthing the nation. Jeshivas claims nothing and gave us the game. And thus, not long after Orlais is born, so is the game. Cut to negative 11 Ancient. King Cordelis Draken of Orlais gets really into the cult of the Maker and begins to spread the religion via conquering nearby city-states, making the Orlais we know today, and as such was soon crowned as emperor. He eventually starts the formal Chantry, making it Orlais' official religion, and begins the Chantry calendar, marking the day its first divine was crowned as its first state, 1-1 divine. The second blight starts soon after. Emperor Draken eventually dies, but not after conquering the Anderfels and Western Free Marches, although his son eventually loses control of the newly conquered lands. 2-9 Glory. It's the Red Crossing. This in itself requires its own video, but the basic is that the Elves of the Dales attacked a small Orlaisian city of Red Crossing. This caused war between the two nations. The Elves lose, Orlais conquer the Dales, and the Elven population is either put into alienage as new cities or become the Dalish. The third blight happens in 310 Towers, and while Orlais is able to keep themselves from being overrun by Darkspawn, the Grey Wardens put pressure on the nation to help others. They eventually agree and help Navarra from being taken by the Blight, except they decide they like the view, and then after the Blight is over, take the city-state, until it eventually regains its independence almost 40 years later. From the years of 440 Black to 510 Exalted begins the Chantry's quest to conquer Deventer with 4 different Exalted marches. As the Chantry is based in Orlais, this also becomes its war as well. In between this time, Orlais also noticed that the Elamari tribes in Ferelden were having some troubles, and they invaded Ferelden. This time proved unsuccessful, but just give it a few years. Now we jump to 725 Storm, where Thedas is hit with the Canary invasion. The Chantry again calls for more exalted marches. And while all that goes on, the Emperor at the time, Freyan, sees the unfair death of Sir Aveline and allows women to become knights in the Empire. Also, Kirkwall is freed from the Canary invasion by an Orlaisian chevalier, who becomes his first Viscount and claims the city for Orlais. Emperor Etienne also leaves his wife, Princess Soteria Pentegas, for his mistress in 797 Storm. This seems weird to bring up, but just give it a minute. The Canary are eventually pushed back, and twin boys are born of Emperor Etienne I, an event that the Divine at the time considered wonderful, and as such she named the next age Blessed. This would prove to not be a fit name for the age at all, and right out of the gates, Kirkwall rebels and regains his freedom from Orlais. One of those twin boys becomes Emperor, Revel, who would eventually be known as the Mad Emperor, and he invades Ferelden, this time succeeding. Due to this war, the Penagoths of Novara see it's their best time to strike revenge on Orlais for their slight on their princess. Yes, Novara started a war because of a divorce. They were able to take control of many cities while Orlais' troops were down in Ferelden. While Orlais was eventually able to fight back, the city of Parendel still is claimed by Novara. This move causes the court in Orlais to lose faith in the Mad Emperor, and they look towards his twin brother, Gratian, in hopes that he would take the throne, despite it being well known that he did not want the title. But in an act of desperation, the Emperor Revel had his twin brother's entire family, down to the smallest infant, killed so that none may take his throne. Revel would die alone in his room after locking himself away for a year, fearing vengeance over this action. Now, finally, in the Dragon Age, Ferelden wins its war and shovels Orlais out of its nation. The two nations remain tense with one another until Empress Selene I makes peace soon after taking her throne. After the Fifth Blight, many Orlesian nobles wish for Selene to make another move for Ferelden. Selene, whose rule has been focused on bettering the culture of the Empire and not the landmass, rallies for peace. And here's also where the book The Masked Empire fits in, but in an attempt to keep this spoilers free, I'm going to skip over this. But TLDR, her cousin Grand Duke Gaspard stands behind the nobles calling for action against Ferelden and plots to overthrow Selene, causing the War of the Lions. And thus we have the Orlais at the beginning of Dragon Age Inquisition, caught in a civil war between two nobles. However, civil war in Orlais is different than you might think. While there are bloody battles, it's more calm. From the Codex entry, the Orlesian Civil War. Instead, the humans have been downright reasonable. We made a killing on furs and silver in Val Royeaux as Gaspard's hole in southern Orlais cut off the incoming trade goods from Ferelden. The nobles in Montfort and Valcheven also brought up violets as though their touch killed Darkspawn. Apparently, Selene declared that wearing purple flowers was a way for humans to show their loyalty to her. In Ferelden, half the cities would be on fire, but in Orlais, the nobles make jokes and the merchants just keep peddling their wares while Gaspard and Selene armies class in the Dales. The only people really suffering are the peasants, but then that's true enough anywhere. Geography. The major thing to remember about current Orlais is that the Dales were supposed to be the elven homeland that Andraste gave to them. As such, this region has a lot of post-Arlathan elven structures. Hallam Shiral was actually the elven capital of the Dales, now home to Selene's Winter Palace. For the most part, the Dales are known to be lush forests and plains. The Arbor Wilds are, for some reason, a massive jungle. The western approach is a desert, mostly due to the leftover blight that still covers a lot of the area from the second blight. On the map, we also see the Nahashin marches. The Tira Shan, another forest, lies below the Hunterhorn Mountains. This forest also seems to hold Dalish elves that worship the Forbidden Ones and seem to sacrifice humans to them. The Gamordan Peaks also are home to a lot of abandoned mines, which are now filled with Darkspawn. And most of Orlais' major cities live within the prosperous heartlands and near Lake Celestine. You have the capital Val Royeaux, Verchel, Leeds, Montesimard, and Val Fermin. Northern Orlais is also home to some fairly large Orlesian cities as well, holding Montfort, Ghislaine, and Seralt, which isn't on the map as it's not a major city, but we do see its location on the Yay War table, and I just wanted to point it out. Politics. Oh lord, so Orlais got some crazy shit here, and I know you'll expect to talk about the game, which I will, but first we need to address noble rankings first, which is somehow even weirder than the game. At one point, the Orlesian titles were described as such. Once the system of noble titles in Orlais was labyrinthine. There were barons, baronnes, baronets, and sir barons, and a horde of others, each with its own origins and its own nuances of comparison. The thing is, titles like this were abolished. Twice. In Orlesian history, once by its founder, Emperor Draken, who feared the game would tear the country apart, and again by the Mad Emperor Revel. Both times it failed, as nobles would just begin to describe their power not in terms of duke or comte, but rather what famous person you were related to. The loss of titles caused a lot of friction with the nobles at the time, and eventually they were reinstated. Now, to get to use the title, you must go through the Council of Heralds, which I will explain in a bit. So in short, Orlais had a hard reset on titles twice in its history, and yet it still holds tight to it. So let's go over the current ones. Emperor or Empress is the title for the Elysian ruler or his or her spouse. Prince or Princess, titles for the direct family members of the ruler, including their children and siblings. Grand Duke and Grand Duchess Title for those who were once princes or princesses but are no longer directly related to the emperor. Duke or duchess, the highest noble title. Marquise, noble title, lower than duke or duchess. Comte or comtesse, another notable title, lower than marquise. Baron or baroness, the lowest noble title and often considered the equivalent of lord or lady. Lord or lady, acceptable dress for any nobility, no matter the rank, but not royalty. And chevalier and dame, title reserved for the order of the Orlesian Knights. So let's talk about the actual government for a bit. Orlais is a complete monarchy, meaning that the emperor or empress is in complete charge of the nation. Granted, there is also an element of keeping nobles happy or risk the threat of assassination or being overthrown. But who becomes emperor? At the end of the day, if the emperor has no heirs, that call goes to the Council of Heralds. The Council of Heralds is actually fairly new to Orlais, being founded by the Mad Emperor's son, Judical, in the late Blessed Age. They are the only ones who have power over the emperor, and their only job is to handle the issue of titles, including that of emperor. Now, how do you get a title? Well, it's a complicated process, but it starts with owning land. Only the rich can own land in Orlais. Now we can finally talk about the game. While the name gives a mysterious air about it, all it really is the competition for more influence. That's it. Any action that is a move for more power is a part of the game. Even the poor of Orlais attempt the game, which sounds silly until you think of it just as the poor trying not to be poor anymore. There is only one rule to the game: don't get caught. Or obviously caught. It's good for people to suspect something happened because of, then people will fear you. But if they know it was you, then you're probably getting arrested. Or worse, mocked. But there is a master of the game, the Dowager. A famous Orlesian saying goes, you must dance with the Dowager if you want to play the game. Dowager Lady Montilion, who you do meet in Dragon Age Inquisition, although briefly, is said to rule Orlais from the shadows. It is believed that she's responsible for putting Empress Celine on the throne, and she has 9 husbands, all of whom have sadly died in tragic accidents. Culture. Oh, Orlais, where to begin with you? I guess first let's talk about the lions thing. So Emperor Draken's family symbol was the dragon. While Draken's lineage was in power, the dragon was the symbol of Orlais. But eventually, the Valmont family took over in the Exalted Age, changing the symbol of Orlais to a lion. This is why the Orlesian Civil War was called War of the Lions. It was 2 Valmont family members fighting each other over the throne. Something that isn't unique to Orlais, but they're known for anyway, is the University of Orlais. People from all around Thedas travel to Val Royeaux to learn from the university, and Empress Celine has been trying to turn Orlais into a cultural powerhouse with this. Art and theater is also large in Orlesian society, but it's not only as a form of entertainment, it's also used in the game as well. Chevaliers are also very important to Orlais. An army made of nobles, they are said to be the most highly trained soldiers in Thedas and are widely respected. Chevaliers are also unique in that they hold power over the commoners of Orlais, which has caused a lot of troubles as it's perfectly legal for a chevalier to just kill some commoner for no reason. We also need to talk about bards. Bard is a complicated title in Orlais. While they do sing and entertain, they are much more than that. Bards are spies, employed by various noble houses. While you would think that this would make it easy to block the spies, having a bard in your party makes you seem much more mysterious and powerful, and as such they are generally allowed to go as they please. While bards do kill, there is a group of assassins in Orlais called the Shadows of the Empire. For the most part, they only work inside Orlais against other noble houses, and not even the emperors know who they are, and some even think they're a myth. Religion. Orlais, being the birthplace of the Chantry, is, not surprisingly, very Andrastian. Val Royeaux is home to the Grand Cathedral, a temple that took almost 200 years to build, and is building so momentous they named a 3rd age after it, the Towers Age. But they are not the most pious nation. In fact, Orlais treats the Chantry like it does any player in the game, using the order to subtly spread Orlesian culture across borders. Dress. So the most obvious thing here, Orlais loves its fashion. The more colorful and intricate, the better in Orlais. And not just for the women either. Both genders use makeup and over-the-top dress to show off their wealth. While we can talk about the over-the-top dresses or shoes or hats or whatever, the main thing to talk about here is the masks. A mask isn't just some random object that is worn on the face, it's a mark of your family. A person's mask associated you to a family. Servants will usually use a mask of lower quality, but still using symbols of the family they serve. There's even a large book that covers different mask styles and the families that use them. In the past, Orlais used to associate a person completely by their mask. This actually got one elven woman in trouble when she put on the mask of a great general as a joke. She then became the general, leading victory in various battles. While people knew it wasn't the actual general, they weren't sure if this was a play in the game, as how else would she have gotten the mask? Eventually she did take it off, the plot revealed, and that's history. This event did lead to that practice being dissuaded, however. Food. Food in Orlais, much like its fashion, is over the top. And hey, fun facts, if you get World of Thetis Volume 2, it actually includes a recipe book, with actual recipes. For the most part, it has a good mix of different nations' foods, but for the most part, it's mostly Orlais. I don't want to spend too much time talking about food, but the gist of all the Orlesian recipes is that they value how it looks and how it tastes. A few examples are the Nug Nug and Mad Bernard's Gift of Flesh. Relationship with other races. Humans. Okay, so Orlais is a human nation, but I think we should talk about this. Orlais, despite being very powerful and considered to be rich and wonderful by other nations, is also hated by many other nations. Seeing as it has a history with occupation with most of Thetis, it's no wonder as to why. The only nation that it feuds with that it didn't rule at one time is Tevinter, and that feud is completely based on why the Chantry hates Tevinter: magic. Elves. As seen with the Dales, Orlais and the Elven people don't exactly get along too well. Dalish elves are obviously still bitter about the whole Red Crossing thing, but elves in the alienage are treated like second-rate citizens, and many in Orlais called elves rabbits, which is actually not the worst name to be called, the worst being knife ear. In a codex entry called Slavery in Tevinter Imperium, it talks about Orlais' relationship with the elves. If they're lucky, they end up in Orlais, which has only servants. Most nobles treat them decently because they are afraid of admitting the truth. Orlesians go to great lengths to maintain the fiction that slavery is illegal. Dwarves. Said to be the only people who have positive ties to Orlais, the dwarves of Orzammar share a border with Orlais and have been trading lyrium and other minerals with them for centuries. Qunari. Really, all nations in Thetis have a negative view on the Qunari, and Orlais is no different. A common slur for the Qunari here is oxman. And that, dear patrons, is the magnificent Orlais. Well, next week I want to take a small break from the nations of Thetis. What do you think I should do next? I know Tevinter's going to be a popular option, but I kind of want to keep that one for last, so that way it's fresh in everyone's mind when Dragon Age 4 comes out. Eventually. Do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong? Comments about your own fan theory. Feel free to tweet me at @Gilderthon on Twitter or send a PM to User Galenon on Reddit. Darash Shiral.